Folks, my name is James. I'm from Learn Photography Canada, and one of the questions we always get in our classes is what's the difference between shooting RAW and shooting JPEG? Now, I know a lot of you out there equate RAW with a better photograph, which is very misleading, whereas some of you just prefer JPEG, and that's totally fine. So what we always encourage our students to do is shoot in JPEG unless they're absolutely certain they're going to edit. And I'm going to show you 6 differences between shooting RAW and JPEG when it comes to photo editing. Now, what I've done is I've taken 2 photos. These are exactly the same. So there's one there. This is a pretty standard shot that you get of a dog at home, and there's another one there. So what you're going to notice, the first one is the JPEG, the second one is a RAW. They're exactly the same photo. The only difference is that out of the camera, the camera does some processing on the JPEG. So you'll notice on this first one, it actually looks better as a JPEG than the RAW on the second one, which doesn't have any built-in contrast, doesn't have any built-in color filters and things like that. But what I want to do is I want to show you the reason why you would, if the JPEG looks better right out of the camera, why would you shoot RAW? Well, let's go into a few differences. So one of the things we're going to do, we're going to go into our develop module here in Lightroom, and I want to show you just one thing right off the hop. Okay, so again, this first one here, the one on the left is the JPEG, the one on the right is your RAW file. Right off the bat, you see white balance here. For those of you who don't have Lightroom, this is where your white balance. And as a JPEG, I really can't change that white balance dropdown. Where if you look at a RAW file, it still maintains that information. So you can change it depending on the different lights. So that's one of the big differences. It is much easier to change the white balance in RAW. Another one is I'm going to show you something really interesting. So let's go back to the JPEG here, which is here. And back here, I want you to know something. There's a whiteboard back here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with the highlights a little bit. So the highlights, for those of you who have taken the Lightroom class, only affects the bright part. And you can see it going brighter and darker here. So normally what we would try to do in a picture like that, sometimes, let's say I found it too bright, I could always bring it down. Well, if we look at the RAW file here, let's do the same thing here. Again, we can bring it up or we can bring it down. Now what you're going to notice is, look, there is some marker on this RAW file that you actually don't see on the JPEG. So that's number 2 that's really, really big when it comes to comparing JPEG and RAW files, is the fact that in a JPEG, you're going to lose a lot of that information. Same thing with the darks. Let me see if I can show you here. So this is Molly, by the way, so say hi to Molly. We're going to work in the shadows. So those darker areas, again, just a reminder, we're on the JPEG here. Let's try to make it a little bit brighter. Now, we can do the same thing in the, let's just go back here. So this is plus 85. Let's try plus 85 in the RAW here, or about that. Okay, what I want you to notice is there's definitely a difference. Going to JPEG, look at here. Okay, look at the quality here, and then let's look at, and you can see that in the RAW, it actually contains much more detail than that JPEG. So again, just like the highlight, there's more information in each pixel regardless if it's bright or dark. I want to show you one more test between the two of them. So let's just go back, and just so we're clear, let's reset both photos to where we were. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I want to show you saturation. So very rarely do I actually change saturation here, but let's go saturation up on the JPEG, and you'll notice it actually gets quite cartoony, where in the RAW it actually maintains, while it does get a little bit cartoony, it maintains a lot more integrity to the photo than the JPEG. So when we look at it, and if we do photo edit, looking at the highlights, looking at the blacks, looking at the white balance, looking at like vibrance and saturation, there certainly is an advantage shooting RAW. It's going to give us a lot more flexibility. It's going to give us a more comprehensive ability to edit. So there is an advantage. But just a reminder, if you are just shooting off the camera and sharing photos off the camera, and I'm resetting both photos, you definitely want to shoot in JPEG, which is the one I'm going to and the reason is because that picture does look better out of the box. So rule of thumb, you're not going to photo edit, just shoot JPEG. It's a great option. But if you are going to photo edit, RAW is a good option as well. A lot of cameras these days, you're able to produce both a RAW and a JPEG per photo, and that kind of future proofs you that going forward.